everybody. Great to see you today. My name's Joe Wilson. I'm one of the pastors here. Good to see you at CCC today. This morning, we're going to look at what we're going to call the FaceTime verse of the Bible. How many of you have used FaceTime? Okay, quite a few of you have used that, a bunch of you. I think most people know what FaceTime is. For the uninitiated, it is a video call where you can look at the other person while you're talking to them. Now, I know most people today would much prefer a text to a phone call. For a lot of younger adults, FaceTime is kind of passé. But if you have grandkids, FaceTime's a thing. You've learned to appreciate what that is. But it's almost crazy to think about the days before FaceTime, because there was a time when video calling for everyday people was just an absolute crazy concept. And when I was a kid, a video call seemed so far-fetched that you would only ever see it portrayed in like science fiction movies or in spy kind of situations or on the Jetsons. And even though it might have been technically possible when I was younger, the technology wasn't near widespread enough for that to actually happen. But it all changed back in 2010 when the first FaceTime call took place between Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive, one of his senior vice presidents. Now, you guys have seen this before, but when you're making a FaceTime call, at first there's a video screen and it's just a big old picture of you making that call, which can be a little bit disturbing if you kind of forgot what you put on that day. But then what happens is another person answers the call and their video blows up into the big part of the screen and you get shrunk down into a little tiny corner of the screen. They get big and you get small. And friends, this is good theology. The way a FaceTime call gets presented on your phone says something about how people who love God ought to see the world. It's the theology of letting other people get bigger and making yourself smaller. And so it's into that context that I want to introduce you to the FaceTime verse in the Bible that says this: do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Now, this is a really important set of verses because they tell us that if Jesus is at the center of your life, then when you interact with other people, they get bigger and you get smaller. It's the FaceTime verse. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. I think this might be one of the hardest instructions in the Bible to obey. And yet, it is at the core of what's expected of a Jesus follower. There's a word that encapsulates these verses, and it's what we're talking about today. Friends, the longer that you walk with God, the more your life should be marked with selflessness. That's the word. And let me tell you something. This will be one of the great battles of your life. I don't care if you're in 6th grade or 36 or 86 years old. You will have this fight on your hands every day of your life. This isn't a hill that you get to climb once and then, you go buy the t-shirt that says, I conquered selflessness. You don't get off the hook quite that easy. The hill of selflessness is a daily climb, and it is one where you lay your life down. Selflessness is the process of getting smaller and letting everybody else get bigger. And the follower of Jesus is to be marked by seeing the world through this kind of a selfless lens. And friends, this is so essential because you can't become more like Jesus without growing to be more selfless. It's impossible. Because when Jesus came into this world, he came demanding nothing and giving everything. And listen, he had every right to come in the full splendor of a king as a mighty ruler of the universe. He had every right to come in majesty and in power, but he didn't. In fact, he said of himself, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus is selflessness embodied. He said, I've come into this world and I'm not making my life about me, I'm making it about you. And aren't you glad? We celebrate that. We're grateful for the truth of this verse because we know that because Jesus became a servant, he put our needs before his own. He put us in the big screen and he got into the little one. The Bible says he emptied himself of all of his rights. He died in our place. And we are so grateful that he was selfless. But I think sometimes we're not so anxious. We're not so sure that we want to sign up to be like him in this regard. In fact, I think this is what we do a lot of the times. We want to approach following Jesus and putting the character of Jesus in our lives kind of like we're shuffling through a buffet line, picking and choosing things. Yes, I'll take some joy, Jesus. Please, heap some of that up here. And I'll take some love, sure. And I would love some protection for my family and for myself. You know, a little bit of patience, not too much, but a little bit. Selflessness, would you look at that? My plate's full. But we're not in a buffet line. And we're not supposed to pick and choose which parts of Jesus we want to be like. And so Paul, when he's writing to the church about how they ought to live, reminds them of this by giving them this FaceTime verse. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. You get small, and you make others big. Now, this cuts directly against our most basic instincts. This is not how we live. Not really. And our culture is of no help to us here. So I think we need to start today with an admission, because this is the only way that we're going to find success. That admission is, I am naturally selfish, and you are naturally selfish. We've got to start with this because it is just the truth. This is our Achilles heel. This is the fight we're in. And if you don't acknowledge it, you've already lost. I'm naturally selfish. You are naturally selfish. In fact, every relationship that you are a part of is made up of two naturally selfish people. And you are one of them. And the relationship will only function to the degree that both people work on this trait that we're talking about today, to become more selfless. This is incredibly practical. Now, unfortunately, I have to remind myself pretty regularly that selflessness or selfishness is kind of my default. Left on my own, I want to do the exact opposite of what this verse says. Left on my own, I will do everything out of selfish ambition and vain conceit. Left on my own, I won't value others above myself. I'll value myself the most. That is the truth about me when I don't submit myself to God. But here's what we all find out. Your life does not work when you perpetually put yourself first. When you value you more than you value everybody else, life is a series of broken friendships and strained marriages and toxic workplaces and wounded relationships when we don't get this right. So if we're going to live out this verse and get marked by selflessness, we have to recognize that there is ultimate emptiness in a selfish life. That's why the Bible presents this verse the way it does. Don't do anything out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. It's an acknowledgement that selfish ambition and vain conceit exist inside of every single person here because of sin. And these traits are so deeply set within us that we don't often understand that they're to blame for our unhappiness. And this really goes against our natural thinking. We think that if we put ourselves first, our wants, our needs, our desires, our impulses, we think if we put me first, that's what's going to make me happy. And it doesn't. That leaves us feeling empty. Because life only really works when you make it about others more than you make it about yourself. This life is really paradoxical in nature, in this sense. In one way, your life is about you, and at the same time, your life is not about you at all. It's about you in this way. You get to live in your skin. You are a person created and loved by God. You have a lifespan with choices and opportunities, and only you get to navigate that life. Every person in this room lives in the first person singular. You've been given a life. It is all yours. But it's also not about you. The Bible's clear that if you try to make it all about you, it's going to be empty. If you keep yourself in the big screen and everybody else in the small screen, life will ultimately feel unsatisfying. But we do this. We do it over and over and over again. We make life all about us, and then we wonder why we're not happy. Now, there's this great example of this in the Bible of a guy who took a significant amount of time to make life all about himself. His name was Solomon. He wrote the book called Ecclesiastes. And if there was a guy who just kind of chased everything, it was him. You name it. He chased money, and he became the richest man on the face of the earth, incredibly wealthy. He chased education because he wanted to be the most intelligent person. He ran after pleasure, and you name it. Entertainment and music and food and sex. He was on a self-indulgent treasure hunt. He built gardens and buildings and cities, these tremendous construction projects, and he did those things not because of altruism, because he wanted to help society at large, but because he wanted to make a name for himself. He chased every kind of pleasure and every kind of ego builder that you can imagine, and here's how he responds to it. Meaningless. Meaningless, utter meaningless. Everything is meaningless. You see, this is the result of selfishness, a self-indulgent life. It is emptiness. And if only we could learn from his lessons. But we seem bound and determined to make the same mistakes, pursue the same empty causes. And we may not have the same resources as Solomon, but we still make life all about us by chasing the same stuff. American culture is big time into this. We often make life mostly about money and possessions. And we think money and stuff is the key to life. Now, I'm not a huge country music fan, unless it's 90s country, then I'm in. But Chris Jansen had a song back in 2015 with these lyrics. Working like a dog all day ain't working for me. I wish I had a rich uncle that had kicked the bucket, and I was sitting on a pile like Warren Buffett. I know everybody says money can't buy happiness, but it could buy me a boat. And it could buy me a truck to pull it. And it could buy me a Yeti 110 iced down with some silver bullets. I mean, I think we're all a little bit like Chris Jansen. You're like, hey, I know money's not going to buy me happiness, but it can buy me stuff. Now, maybe for you it's not a boat, but it's something. And then we've all probably experienced something called buyer's remorse. You know what that is? You buy something in the heat of the moment. You think, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be great. This is going to make my life so wonderful. And then it hits you that this is not going to bring you the joy you thought it was going to bring you. You say, I bought this house. I bought this car. I bought this guitar. Bought these jeans, this toy, whatever it is for you. And then you realize, this is not going to make me happy. When we make things about us, things get hollow. Some of the saddest, most depressed people in the world are the richest people. Now, listen, it is not wrong to have resources. In fact, the Bible says you're foolish if you don't build enough to take care of yourself and your family. But you have to realize that money and stuff will never satisfy when you make them all about you. It's the same with achievement and fame. I don't know if you saw this just this last summer. Scottie Scheffler's the #1 golfer in the world. He has been for the last 190 weeks. That takes an incredible amount of discipline and mental toughness to get to that place. Very few have achieved it. In the past several years, he's won 19 tournaments, which is an incredible feat. And so this summer, he's being interviewed before the British Open. And he was asked, what's the longest you've ever celebrated a win? And here's how he answered. He said, I think it's kind of funny. I said something after the Byron Nelson Classic this year about it feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that kind of euphoric feeling. And to win the Byron Nelson Championship at home, I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, you celebrate, you get to hug your family. My sisters were there. It's such an amazing moment. And then it's like, okay, Now what are we going to eat for dinner? You know, life goes on. It's great to be able to win tournaments and to accomplish the things I have in the game of golf. It brings tears to my eyes just to think about, because I've literally worked my entire life to become good at the sport and to have that kind of sense of accomplishment. It's a pretty cool feeling. And then he says this, but this is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from a sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of the deepest places in your heart. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there, and all of a sudden, you get to number one in the world, and they're like, what's the point? I really do believe that, because, what's the point? And then he had this moment. Why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know, because if I win, it's going to be awesome for 2 minutes. Now, that was probably the most sincere press conference those people had ever experienced. What Scotty Scheffler was saying is what we're talking about here. That personal achievement, even if you're the best in the world at something, by itself, it's empty. Now, achievement can be good. And it's that kind of drive that moves us, again, to provide for our families. But you see, sin takes something good and it twists it and it spoils it and it makes it sour. And what I am trying to do, my very best to do here, is to underscore the truth we began with, that we are all naturally selfish and that a selfish life is an empty one. But there is another way. And it is the selfless way of Jesus that's described in the second half of our verses today. And we start out with this idea of not doing anything out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. But then he continues, he says, rather in humility, value others above yourselves. Here is the key to becoming more selfless. We have to recognize that satisfaction in this life is found in selflessness. You see, the selfish life is where you make yourself big and you make everybody else smaller. The selfless life is where you're not looking to the world for what you can get out of it. You're looking for what you can bring to it. It's living with the posture that you're not the most important person in the world. You're not even the most important person in the room. That everybody else matters as much as you matter, even more. So when you interact with them, you put yourself in the small bubble. And you put other people in the big bubble. And this takes a tremendous amount of humility. But I don't think humility alone is going to cut it. It also takes the ability to find joy in selflessness, to find satisfaction in that life. Now, one of the most common ways that selflessness finds expression in our lives is when we serve somebody. You've probably experienced this before. I think most people in this room have experienced the joy that's related to serving another person. Something happens when you help somebody else, even in a small way. You get a kickback that you don't experience any other way in this life. That's because God has wired you in such a way that you feel satisfaction when you give your life away. This is why so many people spend so much of their lives frustrated. The reason they struggle is they don't realize that fulfillment comes when we give our lives away. We think fulfillment's going to come from personal gratification. That kind of happiness is what Scotty Scheffler was talking about. It lasts about 2 minutes. It's the servant life where we really experience this. Now, I know immediately when I start talking about serving in a church service, people want to institutionalize this. It's just natural for us. And you might be just saying to yourself, okay, Joe's asking me to serve. I'll serve. Give me a job. Tell me where to sign up. And that makes sense. In fact, I would say, if you're not serving around here, why not? It's a great way to put this into practice. But that's not the total picture I'm trying to paint. We often hear the word serve, and we think about a specific kind of task that we volunteer for. When I talk about serving, instead of linking it to a task, I'm asking you to link it to your identity. When you commit to becoming a more selfless person, serving others flows from that. You see, selflessness is the goal. Serving others is a way to get to it. And I want to underscore, this is not simply about the church finding a place for you to serve. And there are plenty of places for you to serve in the church. And you're needed in those places, whether that's student ministry or children's ministry or frontline or new here or lots of other places. There are bunches of opportunities that are really important. And those are great ways for us to serve one another. They're measurable. There's something that we can point to in our schedule that says, I'm putting this value into practice. So sign up and step up in those ways. But more than that, I'm asking you to link this to your heart. Those service opportunities in the church, those are tasks that need to be done by servants. Do you see the difference? Are you a servant? This is about your identity. This is about your character. Because it's possible to serve in lots of ways and still keep yourself in the big bubble. You can serve and not care about other people at all. It's still about you. It's about building your own resume. Selflessness is the posture that drives service. It's that you value others above yourself. This is a Christ-centered worldview that drives every single action. So don't miss this. When our lives get marked by selflessness, we serve others, not just because we're supposed to, and not just because we're needed, but because it's who we are. So yes, serve in the church. You should. If not, what are you waiting for? Take a volunteer tour. Sign up on the website. Yes, serve in the church, but also serve your spouse. In that relationship, give them the big bubble, and you get the little bubble in every way that you can. Make them feel treasured. Make it a goal to outserve your spouse. You say, that's not fair. I shouldn't have to do more than them or more than they do for me. This isn't about them right now. This is about your character and your Christ-likeness. That's why humility is required. Serve your friends. You say, wait a second, Joe, you don't know my friends. I don't even know why they're my friends. I mean, I always give more than they give. It's like Pratt Street, man. It is one way all the time. Good. You're on the right track. Serve your teammates. Make it a goal to help them get better. Serve your coaches. Help them clean up after practice. Serve your coworkers. Yes, that one that you just thought of. The one you don't want to help. Find a way to put that person in the big bubble. Serve strangers. Serve in structured ways. The church and in community. Serve in unstructured ways. Because the majority of your life is outside of structured opportunities to serve. Be selfless in those moments. This is how we live out this verse. Don't do anything out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. This is about living sacrificially all the time. And this is the fight of your life. It is about ingraining this into your identity. And you can do this. You know, there's an interesting pattern when you look at the people that God used to write the Bible. God used a number of different people to convey his message to the church in the Bible. And you start to see a pattern of maybe why he chose those specific people. Really quickly here, just look at a few verses with me and see how the early leaders in the church identified themselves, just by way of introduction alone. This is the start to 4 different books in the Bible. Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. Simon Peter, a servant and apostle of Jesus Christ. Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and the brother of James. Do you see yourself in this way? I mean, these guys, they're copying after the most selfless one of all, Jesus. This character trait, this part of our identity, to become selfless like Jesus, it is the best way to live. This is the great paradox. The more you make your life about you, the less you're going to enjoy living. And the more you make it about others, the more life you have. Jesus said, if any of you want to be my followers, you must forget about yourself. You must take up your cross and follow me. If you want to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you give up your life for me and for the good news, you'll save it. Now, friends, God gives us a choice in all of this. He doesn't force you to do anything with your life. He doesn't force you to show compassion by helping other people or encouraging other people or using your talents to bless other people. If you want to, you can live a totally self-driven, self-indulgent life. And a lot of people do. Their whole life. Their whole life they just live with themselves in the big bubble. But here's the deal. If you live that way, you will miss out on some of the deepest level of satisfaction and joy that a person can know. It's just how you were made. You were designed by God that when you put other people before yourself, there is an intense emotional internal byproduct that kicks in. And friends, this is the secret of significance. It is the key to happiness. It is being who God made you to be. But it's a choice. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you today and this week to check your heart. And maybe one of the ways that we can get at this is just have a moment of reflection at the end of each day. Every day this week, you get to the end of the day, ask yourself, as you think back on the day, did I put other people in the big screen? Or did I make it all about me? How did I do with that today? Maybe you take this FaceTime verse and you put it on a sticky note and you stick it on the mirror in your bathroom. And when you're getting ready in the morning, you can pray, God, help me to consider others as more important than myself. God, help me not to do anything today out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. I also wonder, can you point to a place where you're being intentional about humbling yourself to serve others? Is there any place in your calendar where you just say, hey, here are ways that I'm serving this week? Is that a step you need to take? Maybe to volunteer in some way. Maybe to volunteer around here. Now, be clear. It's not about marking off service hours. It's about becoming more like Jesus in selflessness. Day by day, relationship by relationship, moment by moment, where we put other people before ourselves. And he's our example. The Bible says he humbled himself completely on our behalf when he went to the cross. In fact, the cross is a perfect picture of this for us, where the perfect one dies for the sinful ones. He served us. He put us in the big bubble. You know, every week we try to take time to remind ourselves of the greatness of Jesus that was displayed in the ultimate act of selflessness. We take communion, which is a small piece of unleavened bread. It's a small cup of juice. They are reminders to us that God loved us even though we didn't deserve that love. That Jesus suffered on our behalf so that we could have real life through him. That he was selfless for us. If you didn't pick one up, there are some communion packets in the back of the room. Let's take communion together at this time.